Rapunzel. When a pop princess is locked inside a studio recording tower for her own good by her record label boss adoptive father, a passing prince with a few musical ambitions of his own realizes that he can climb her hair extensions to reach her room at the top. Once upon a time there lived a poor man and his wife who lived in a little house overlooking the beautiful garden of a very rich record label boss. This garden was full of all manner of exotic trees and glamour models and piles of gold. No one dared to enter this garden, for the record label boss was a man of great cruelty, and he was feared by the whole world. One day the woman stood with her baby daughter in her arms looking out of her window at the garden, when she saw a bucket full of diamonds, which had been left out in the rain after the label boss became bored of counting them. The woman longed for a diamond from the bucket, and her desire grew day by day until she became weak with pining. Her husband fretted and asked his wife what ailed her. "Husband," she answered, "I want one of the diamonds from that bucket. If I don't have one, I shall never have a diamond." This was true. They were so poor that her engagement ring had been a ring pull from a tin of beans with some tin foil wrapped around the sharp bit. The husband, who loved his wife dearly, decided he must fetch her one of the diamonds, no matter what the cost. So at dusk he placed a sock over his head, climbed over the wall into the garden, and plucked a diamond from the bucket. He stole back through the shadows to the wall, where he froze in terror. There, standing in his path, was the record label boss. "That," said the boss, with a terrible look, "was an absolutely appalling attempt at theft by stealth. Keep the day job, because you're certainly not going to make it in this business." "I don't have a day job, and I don't know what you're talking about," said the husband, quickly swallowing the diamond. "Yes, you do," said the label boss. "I just saw you swallow that diamond. You dare steal from me like a common thief and then tell lies. You will pay severely for this foolish act, and that rock's going to sting on the way out." "Oh, sir," begged the husband, "please pardon my crime. I did it for my wife, who saw your bucket of bling from the window and desired a diamond so much that she would surely have pined away of woe if I had not grabbed one for her." The record label's boss's wrath seemed to cool, for he replied, "If you speak the truth, you may take as many diamonds as you like, on one condition. You shall turn that noisy baby daughter of yours over to my care, and I will raise her as the property of my record label. I've been looking for a new female act, and I will mould her for stardom from the youngest age." The husband considered this for a moment, took out his mobile and called his wife. 10 minutes later the couple sprinted from the garden, minus their baby daughter, and carrying a sack of diamonds. They were never heard of again. "I will call you Rapunzel," said the record label boss to the baby girl. No, something more contemporary. Rapunzel. Yes, I like that. Very urban. Now go to your new room and start singing." Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun, and was famed for her voice and her long golden hair by the time she was just 5 years old. By the time she was 16, she had released 5 platinum-selling albums on the boss's label, and had her own perfume and clothing range, which made the boss very happy and even more wealthy. However, he became concerned that Rapunzel was reaching an age where she might discover drink and fairy dust. To avoid this possibility, he took her to a remote forest and shut her in a tower-shaped recording studio with neither stairs nor doors, and only a very small window high up at the top. And there she stayed, recording hit singles, with no trouble from boys, or drink, or fairy dust. Whenever the record label boss wanted to get into the studio to collect his new hit single, he stood at the foot of the tower and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel's long hair was as fine as spun gold, and it had many extensions in it that made it even longer. When she heard the boss's voice, she loosened her plaits and let her hair fall down out of the window, and the record label boss climbed up it to retrieve his hit single. After a few years it happened that one day a prince was running through the woods with the king's guards hot on his heels, for, under the influence of fairy dust, he had removed several items of clothing from a shop and punched the security guard on his way out. As he drew near the tower, he heard someone singing so sweetly that he stopped in his tracks, spellbound, and listened. It was Rapunzel, recording one of her hit singles and letting her voice ring out into the wood. To the prince it seemed that this music was sweeter than the ringtones of 100 stolen mobile phones, and he sought in vain for a door at the base of the tower. Just then he heard the king's guards approaching, so he hid himself in a thicket of nettles, where he stayed until the guards were gone. As he was about to emerge, he saw the record label boss approach the tower and call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel appeared at the tiny window at the top of the tower, let down her hair extensions, and the record label boss climbed up them. "Aha," said the prince, "there are the stairs. I too will climb them, innit?" The next day he went to the foot of the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." As soon as Rapunzel let her hair down, the prince climbed up. At first, Rapunzel was very frightened when a man came in through the window, for she had not seen any man but the record label boss since her imprisonment aged 16. But the prince was very kind, and was delighted to be shown Rapunzel's wall of gold and platinum discs. He told her at once that his heart had been so moved by her singing as he ran through the forest that he knew he would not know happiness again until he had seen her. When Rapunzel showed him her collection of diamond-studded watches, he professed his love for her and asked her to marry him, and she consented at once. "He is young and handsome," thought Rapunzel, "and I love his little wispy moustache. I will be much happier with him than with the record label boss." "I will go with you," Rapunzel smiled, "but my record label boss will not allow it. Here is how we must get down from the tower. Every time you come to see me, you must bring a spool of silk thread, which I will weave together into a ladder, and I will climb down it, and you will take me away." "Yeah," said the prince, "but what I'm going to do is move in with you for now. I'm going to be a famous MC, and I can use the studio facilities to make my first mixtape, innit?" "Of course," said Rapunzel, who was smitten by his dishevelled good looks. "Excellent," said the prince. "Now hand me a couple of those gold discs. I need to pop into town for some things." 1 week later the record label boss arrived at the tower, only to find that Rapunzel's hair was mysteriously already trailing down its side. He climbed up as usual, but when he came through the window he found himself coughing terribly, because the studio was filled with cigarette smoke. Through the fog, the record label boss saw that the studio had been painted black. Bottles of wine and empty wraps of fairy dust littered the floor. Several items of studio equipment were missing, and Rapunzel's fine jewellery and all her gold and platinum discs were gone. Rapunzel herself was passed out across the mixing desk, her face in a half-eaten bucket of Alabama chicken. The label boss shook her to see if she had been enchanted. Rapunzel raised her head briefly and was grievously sick into the chicken bucket. "Wicked child!" cried the record label boss. "I hide you from the world's corruptions, yet still you find a way to deceive me." "Could you please not shout?" moaned the prince, who had been asleep under the bed. "We're making an album in here, and you're totally ruining the vibe." "I will fetch the king's guards at once to have you removed," shrieked the record label boss. "You can't," said Rapunzel. "We're engaged, and I can do what I want. Besides, he's going to be a famous MC." "I can rhyme," said the prince, "all the time." He lit a cigarette and pulled out another wrap of fairy dust. The label boss ran back to town in a rage and returned with the king's guards, and he quickly set to climbing Rapunzel's hair again. "Behave!" screamed the record label boss as he reached the window. "You will continue to produce hits, and you will—" He suddenly stopped in his tracks, for he saw that Rapunzel was holding a pair of scissors. "My prince thinks I should chop the lot off," she slurred, "as an expression of my individuality." "No, stupid child!" shrieked the record label boss, but it was too late. Rapunzel made a huge snip, and he plunged to the ground, her golden tresses billowing above him. "Now we shall be married," Rapunzel cried joyfully to her prince, who, having spent all the money from the discs on fairy dust and not silk thread for a ladder, was doing a line of fairy dust from the surface of the last remaining gold disc. "Excellent," said the prince. "I'll need a fine suit to be married in, so I'll just take this last gold disc and the rest of the studio equipment into town, and I'll be right back with something great. Just let down your hair for me and—" "Bugger," said Rapunzel. "Bugger," said the prince. The end. Don't forget to like and subscribe and press the wee bell notification. And a huge big thank you to all my subscribers and patrons. See you next week. Bye bye.